She was the face of maternal devotion. But while the world praised her, her daughter was starving, slowly, silently. What really happened behind those hospital walls? And how far would one mother go to keep her lie alive? In the soft glow of countless phone screens and the sympathetic murmur of community gatherings, Eleanor presented the perfect portrait of maternal devotion. Her daughter, little Lily, frail but smiling bravely, became a symbol of resilience, a child battling unseen, relentless illnesses. Eleanor was her rock, her fierce advocate, navigating the sterile corridors of hospitals, translating complex medical jargon, holding Lily's hand through every painful procedure. It was a picture painted with painstaking care, a mother's unwavering love against the onslaught of childhood disease. A narrative readily accepted, even celebrated. Who wouldn't rally behind such a seemingly selfless mother, her exhaustion hidden behind a brave smile for the cameras? But behind this carefully constructed chronic illness facade, a different, chilling reality festered. Unseen. Unspoken. For 5 long years, Lily wasn't just battling illness, she was trapped within it, subjected to a relentless barrage of heavy, invasive treatments, surgeries that scarred, medications that fogged her young mind. Needles and scans became childhood companions, replacing playgrounds and birthday parties. The suffering was real, agonizingly so, a constant thrum beneath the surface of Lily's carefully managed public appearances. Yet, the source of that suffering remained shrouded in Eleanor's performance of care. What horrifying truth lay hidden beneath the layers of feigned concern and tearful updates? This wasn't a straightforward battle against a biological foe. It was a story steeped in manipulation, a terrifying exploration of how trust can be weaponized. It pulls us into the shadowed corners of the mother-daughter relationship, twisting the sacred bond into something unrecognizable, something deeply disturbing. How could a mother, the very definition of nurturing protection, push her own daughter into a life defined by pain, fear, and the cold reality of the emergency room? What drove Eleanor down this path? Was it a cry for attention, a desperate need for validation, or something darker, more complex, rooted in an illness of deception all its own? The why remains a haunting question, a glimpse into a psychological abyss most cannot fathom. And what of the system designed to heal and protect? The doctors, nurses, specialists, a small army of professionals Lily encountered over those 5 years. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of interactions, yet the pattern remained obscured. How did a medical system, built on observation, evidence, and ethical oaths, fail so profoundly to see the signs? Where were the checks, the balances, the critical questions when a child's medical history spiraled into 1,000 hospital visits, and to treatments for conditions never definitively witnessed outside the mother's reporting? The failure wasn't just individual, it suggests cracks in the very foundation of trust upon which healthcare relies. The unseen suffering wasn't just Lily's physical pain, it was the systemic blindness that allowed the charade to continue, year after agonizing year. The story of Lily and Eleanor is not an easy one to confront. It challenges our assumptions about motherhood, illness, and the institutions we depend on. It forces us to look closer, to question the narratives presented to us, especially when they seem too perfectly tragic. It's a creative exploration rooted in devastating fact, delving into the psychological depths of a mother's actions and a child's stolen life, a life brimming with potential snuffed out by betrayal. The truth, when it finally surfaced, was more shocking than anyone had dared to imagine. It begs the question, how does a story supposed to be about healing become one of hidden harm? To find answers, perhaps we must look back to the beginning, before the whispers of worry grew into a storm. To understand the tragedy, we must first meet the little girl known as Lily, born not into the shadow of illness, but under the wide-open skies that promised possibility. Her early childhood began amidst the quiet hum of suburban life, punctuated by the normal rhythms of scraped knees and bedtime stories. But beneath the surface, the family dynamics were already shifting. A strained relationship between her parents finally fractured, leading Eleanor, Lily's mother, to pack up her daughters and seek a fresh start miles away in the picturesque, mountain-adjacent town of Maple Creek, Colorado. A new beginning. Or so it seemed. Lily herself was a spark. Quick-witted, with eyes that seemed to absorb the world with an intense curiosity. She wasn't just imaginative, she lived partly in the vibrant world she created, filled with talking animals she'd sketch with surprising skill, or intricate narratives spun around her collection of slightly worn stuffed bears. Her memory was astonishing. She could recite entire scenes from her favorite animated movies, mimicking the voices perfectly, much to the delight of her beloved Grandpa Arthur. Ah, Grandpa Arthur. He was Lily's anchor in those early years. A retired engineer with kind eyes and hands roughened by years of woodworking, he cherished his visits. Their bond was forged in simple, shared moments, crunching through autumn leaves in the park, sneaking extra marshmallows into hot chocolate. Cozy afternoons spent reading adventure stories aloud where Lily would inevitably take over, her small voice filled with dramatic flair. These normal moments of early childhood felt precious, uncomplicated. Grandpa Arthur saw the bright, boundless potential in his youngest granddaughter, a spirit full of laughter and light. He kept snapshots of her in his mind, Lily, covered in finger paint, beaming, Lily, fast asleep, clutching a well-loved rabbit. Pure innocence. Even then, though, looking back, were there whispers? Subtle signs? Eleanor, while outwardly attentive, seemed to possess an underlying need for something more. Attention? Validation? Control? It was hard to pinpoint. A slight edge to her voice when Lily preferred Grandpa Arthur's comfort after a tumble. An insistence on detailing every minor cough or sniffle to anyone who would listen, perhaps lingering a bit too long on the worry. Little things, easily dismissed. Just motherly concern, right? Most people thought so. Eleanor cultivated an image of capable, slightly overwhelmed single motherhood. But Grandpa Arthur sometimes felt a flicker of unease, a sense that Eleanor's focus felt intense. Almost performative. Then, around Lily's second birthday, the first tangible worry emerged. Digestive troubles. Difficulty keeping food down, bouts of constipation that left her cranky and uncomfortable. Toddlers have tummy issues, it wasn't extraordinary. But Eleanor's reaction felt amplified. Her voice tight with anxiety, she rushed Lily to the emergency room at Pinnacle Children's Hospital, a place that would soon become hauntingly familiar. The bright murals on the walls did little to soften the sterile efficiency. Eleanor, clutching Lily's hand, presented a compelling case to the attending physician, a litany of symptoms, her brow furrowed with worry. Perhaps she embellished slightly? Added a touch more drama to the duration, the severity? It's impossible to say for sure. The medical team listened, examined the small child, ran standard tests. The initial diagnosis was straightforward: severe constipation, common in toddlers. A routine treatment plan was implemented, aimed at relieving the immediate discomfort. Nothing extraordinary, the doctors reassured Eleanor. They expected a swift improvement. For a time, it seemed they were right. The initial interventions worked, Lily's system regulated, and she returned to her bubbly self, chattering about dinosaurs and demanding another story from Grandpa Arthur. But Eleanor remained watchful. Unconvinced. She reported lingering issues, persistent symptoms that others didn't seem to notice. Was it genuine maternal anxiety, hypervigilance born of love? Or was it something else? A seed of doubt, perhaps, planted in Grandpa Arthur's mind when Eleanor insisted on yet another follow-up appointment despite Lily seeming perfectly fine, laughing and playing in the garden. A fleeting frown on a nurse's face set the sheer intensity of Eleanor's demands in the ER. Small things. Easily ignored. The first hurdle seemed cleared, but for Eleanor, the journey into the medical labyrinth had only just begun. Eleanor's unease proved tragically persistent. What followed was not recovery, but a descent into an ever-deepening medical nightmare, orchestrated by the very person meant to protect Lily. The journey into the medical labyrinth had only just begun, and its twists and turns would consume the next 5 years of Lily's young life. Pinnacle Children's Hospital stopped being a place of occasional visits. It became a second home, a landscape defined by beige corridors and the constant, low hum of machinery. The visits blurred, one into the next. 10 became 50. 50 became hundreds. Eventually, and conceivably, the tally surpassed 1,000 individual hospitalizations, checkups, emergency runs, and procedures. A staggering number. Think about that. Over 1,000 times Lily crossed that threshold, her small hand likely clutched tightly in Eleanor's, entering a world that increasingly defined her existence. Childhood became measured not in school years or birthdays, but in treatments endured. The medical escalation was relentless, each step seemingly justifying the next in Eleanor's narrative. Simple constipation led to more tests, more scopes. When those failed to satisfy Eleanor's insistence on a deeper problem, a major surgical intervention was proposed, then performed, rerouting the little girl's intestine and stalling a bypass, an external bag becoming a permanent fixture on her small abdomen. It was drastic. Yet, even when this seemed, initially, to stabilize things, allowing Lily a brief return to kindergarten at Maple Creek Elementary where teachers noted her brightness despite frequent absences, Eleanor wasn't satisfied. The symptoms, she insisted, persisted. The digestive issues were profound, she'd tell doctors, her voice laced with weary conviction. And so, the interventions grew more invasive. Feeding tubes became necessary, Eleanor claimed, because Lily simply couldn't digest normally. Different types were tried, nasogastric tubes snaking uncomfortably down her throat, then surgically inserted G-tubes directly into her stomach. None provided the lasting result Eleanor sought. Finally, she pushed for the ultimate solution, total parenteral nutrition, TPN. Feeding Lily intravenously, bypassing her digestive system entirely. Doctors hesitated, surely? This was a serious, complex therapy for a child. But Eleanor was persuasive, relentless. Faced with her unwavering certainty, they eventually installed the intravenous device, tethering Lily to a machine for her basic survival. A 7-year-old girl, sustained by a bag of fluids. Lily's life inside the hospital walls developed its own strange routines. The staff knew her well, nicknaming her princess because she preferred the scratchy feel of fairy tale dress-up gowns over standard hospital wear, a small act of defiance, perhaps. A clinging to fantasy in a world of harsh reality. Her presence became almost normal, nurses greeted her by name, doctors updated Eleanor on progress that never seemed quite enough. Her iPad was a constant companion, its screen a portal to other worlds when this one became too much. Favorite DVDs were packed for every admission, worn discs offering familiar comfort during endless hours in bed. In bursts, her innate energy would surface, she'd chat nonstop with a favorite nurse, her imagination still vibrant, discussing dinosaurs or sharks with infectious enthusiasm. In those moments, one could almost forget the sick narrative. Almost. But Eleanor controlled that narrative. It was she who reported symptoms the medical staff rarely, if ever, witnessed firsthand. Seizures, she claimed, happened frequently at home. Yet, despite continuous monitoring during hospital stays, none were observed. No EEG evidence supported it. Still, Eleanor insisted. And based purely on her reports, powerful medications were prescribed. Drugs like Neurocom, a potent anti-epileptic, were administered daily to a child who showed no clinical signs of needing them. Imagine the internal fog, the side effects layered upon the existing discomfort. When one doctor expressed skepticism, perhaps suggesting weaning Lily off Neurocom, Eleanor would grow agitated, her voice sharp, producing meticulously kept, perhaps too meticulous, logs of supposed seizure activity. Her performance of the distraught, knowledgeable mother was often enough to sway doubt, or at least, to make further questioning seem insensitive. Doctor manipulation became a practiced art. The sheer force of her conviction often steamrolled hesitant practitioners. Why argue with such a dedicated mother? The loss of childhood was profound. Visits with her sisters were rare treats. Simple pleasures, like a trip to the local ice cream parlor for a vanilla cone, were fleeting exceptions in a life increasingly dictated by medical schedules and Eleanor's anxieties. Lily's world shrank to the size of a hospital room, her experiences filtered through the lens of illness, and illness meticulously documented, managed, and ultimately manufactured. Inside the hospital walls, Lily endured a relentless cycle of procedures, tethered to machines, her body bearing the physical and invisible scars of treatments for conditions she may never have truly had. Outside, her mother was spinning a very different story. While Lily navigated a world defined by the cold touch of medical instruments and the constant, low hum of hospital machinery, Eleanor began crafting a masterful public narrative outside those sterile walls. She wasn't just a mother, she transformed herself into the epitome of selfless devotion, the tireless warrior mom battling alongside her tragically ill child. And her primary stage? Social media. With unsettling regularity, Eleanor's online profiles became a curated gallery of Lily's supposed suffering. Photos appeared constantly, Lily looking pale and small in oversized hospital beds, tubes snaking from beneath her pajamas, a brave but weary smile plastered on for the camera Eleanor always seemed to have ready. The emphasis was stark. Images of Lily hooked up to machines, looking frail in a wheelchair, or asleep under harsh fluorescent lights far outnumbered any candid snaps of her playing, laughing, or simply being a child enjoying a moment of normalcy. Those moments, glimpsed occasionally by family like Grandpa Arthur, rarely made the public feed. This carefully constructed public image wasn't just visual, it was verbal, too. To friends, neighbors, even distant relatives, Eleanor spoke in hushed, grave tones about Lily's condition. It wasn't just serious, it was terminal, she insisted. The doctors were running out of options. Every day was precious, uncertain. This terminal illness narrative became the key, unlocking doors to sympathy and, crucially, resources. Armed with this heartbreaking story, Eleanor approached organizations like the Starlight Dreams Foundation, a charity dedicated to granting wishes for sick children. She filled out applications detailing Lily's dire prognosis, her voice perhaps trembling with practiced emotion as she spoke to volunteers. And people responded. How could they not? The community rallied. Online fundraising campaigns on platforms like HopeFund were launched, featuring the most heart-wrenching photos and Eleanor's eloquent, desperate pleas. Donations poured in, small checks from concerned neighbors, larger sums from local businesses moved by the story of the brave little girl and her devoted mother. The funds were ostensibly for Lily's mounting medical bills potentially inflated by unnecessary procedures and treatments, possibly covered simultaneously by fictional Medicaid name, adding a layer of potential financial motive beneath the attention-seeking. Was the sympathy addictive? Was the inflow of cash? Or was it the potent combination of both? Thanks to the terminal illness narrative and the generosity it inspired, Lily experienced moments designed to be magical, albeit under a dark cloud of deceit. The Starlight Dreams Foundation arranged for her to be an honorary police officer for a day, complete with a miniature uniform and a ride in a patrol car. For one of her birthdays, an extravagant party materialized, themed around unicorn nights, a bizarre but somehow fitting mix of fantasy and battle. It reportedly cost thousands, funded entirely by donations, featuring costumed characters, elaborate decorations, and a mountain of gifts. Lily, caught up in the excitement as any child would be, undoubtedly loved the attention and the magic. But the magic was bought with a lie, a performance financed by the exploitation of her manufactured suffering. Grandpa Arthur watched this public spectacle unfold with a growing sense of unease. He saw his granddaughter's resilient spirit, her moments of genuine energy and laughter at home, which seemed jarringly inconsistent with the constant crisis Eleanor portrayed online and in conversation. The sheer scale of the fundraising sometimes felt off. And the casual, frequent mentions of Lily being terminally ill struck a dissonant chord. He tried, gently, to probe. She seemed to have so much energy today, Ellie, he might venture after a visit. But Eleanor would counter swiftly, perhaps with tears welling up, "Oh, Dad, she puts on a brave face. You don't see her afterwards. It takes so much out of her." His doubts were painted as lack of understanding, even lack of support, effectively silencing his concerns. He was caught between his love for Lily, his desire to believe Eleanor, and the nagging feeling that something was profoundly wrong with the picture being presented to the world. The facade held firm, cemented by community support and Eleanor's unwavering performance. The flashing lights of the party cameras captured a manufactured joy, masking the chilling decision Eleanor was about to make, one that would seal Lily's fate. The flashing lights of the party cameras captured a manufactured joy, masking the chilling decision Eleanor was already formulating, one that would seal Lily's fate. By 2017, Eleanor seemed ready to orchestrate the final act of her daughter's public tragedy. She began a campaign within Pinnacle Children's Hospital, her target, a do not resuscitate order for 7-year-old Lily. Her arguments were delivered with practiced, weary gravitas. Lily had suffered enough, she'd plead with doctors, her voice thick with emotion. There was no quality of life left, just endless pain. Wasn't it time, she'd ask, tears welling, to grant her daughter peace? To let her go gently? Many doctors pushed back, recoiling from the request. A DNR was one thing, but Eleanor coupled it with another, more horrifying demand: remove the TPN. Stop the intravenous nutrition that, however inadequate, Eleanor had allegedly already restricted it significantly, was keeping Lily alive. This wasn't about letting nature take its course. Removing the TPN was an active step towards death. Medical ethics screamed against it. To knowingly withdraw essential nutrition from a child, regardless of perceived quality of life, felt unthinkable to most. They refused, citing the certainty that Lily would die without it. She was already frail, underweight, her small body reliant on that lifeline. But Eleanor, furious at the refusal, didn't back down. She doctor shopped, relentlessly seeking someone, anyone, who would bend to her will. Eventually, she found him, Dr. Alastair Finch. Perhaps he was new, less familiar with the long, convoluted history. Maybe he was simply susceptible to Eleanor's powerful performance of the grieving, exhausted mother finally accepting the inevitable. Or perhaps, burdened by caseloads and system pressures, he simply took the path of least resistance. Whatever his reasoning, a profound ethical line was crossed. Dr. Finch agreed to sign the DNR order. With the signed order in hand, her golden ticket, Eleanor immediately insisted the TPN line be removed. No more delays. No more arguments. It was time, she declared, for Lily's suffering to end. The medical staff, now bound by the DNR and perhaps pressured by Dr. Finch's decision, complied. The lifeline was disconnected. Lily was moved to palliative care. For the first few days, paradoxically, she seemed slightly better, more alert. Maybe it was the cessation of constant medical poking and prodding. Eleanor seized on this, capturing a video of herself singing a cheerful rendition of Sunshine Smile with Lily, posting it online as proof of their brave final journey together. Another perfectly curated moment for her audience. But it was a cruel illusion. As the days crawled by without proper nutrition, the inevitable decline began. Starvation, insidious and relentless, took hold. Lily grew weaker, listless. The spark in her eyes dimmed. Her only intake was the occasional swab of melted popsicle juice Eleanor permitted caregivers to administer, a pathetic substitute for sustenance. High doses of prescribed medications, including the potent Neurocom, continued unabated. It was during one visit in these final weeks that the most heartbreaking moment occurred. Grandpa Arthur sat by Lily's bedside, trying to read her a story, his voice thick with unshed tears. Lily, frail but lucid, turned her head weakly on the pillow. "Grandpa," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm hungry. So hungry." The simple word struck him like a physical blow. His granddaughter was starving, and he could do nothing. Eleanor's instructions were absolute, only the juice on the sponge. He was haunted by her small, pleading voice, the gnawing hunger she expressed, a hunger he was forbidden to satisfy. It was a moment of pure, helpless agony, a memory that would later return, drenched in unbearable guilt. Around 3 weeks after her TPN was stopped, and late August 2017, Lily's struggle ended. She passed away quietly in the palliative care unit. The official death certificate listed the cause as intestinal failure, a plausible consequence of her complex, fabricated medical history. But Eleanor added more threads to her tapestry of lies. The certificate also noted, falsely, that Lily suffered from autism and a seizure disorder. It solidified the narrative of a profoundly sick child finally succumbing to multiple ailments. The family, including a devastated Grandpa Arthur, grieved, their sorrow filtered through the lens of the terminal illness lie Eleanor had maintained for years. They mourned the loss of a little girl they believed had fought bravely against insurmountable odds. Lily was laid to rest, her short life memorialized as a tragic battle lost. The curtain fell, or so everyone believed. Lily was laid to rest in Maple Creek's quiet cemetery, mourned as a fragile soul lost too soon to relentless illness. The curtain fell on the tragedy, the community sighed its collective grief, and life, for everyone but those closest to the loss, moved on. Or so everyone believed. But the truth, buried under layers of deceit and misplaced trust, refused to stay silent forever. It clawed its way out less than a year later, not through a grand revelation, but through Eleanor's own chillingly familiar actions. She appeared once again at the doors of Pinnacle Children's Hospital, this time with her eldest daughter, Chloe, in tow. The performance was eerily similar. Eleanor, face etched with worry, described Chloe's debilitating bone pain. She spoke darkly of a past cancer diagnosis, something Chloe had supposedly battled years ago, now potentially returning with a vengeance. She needed tests run, expert opinions sought, immediately. Urgently. But this time, something was different. The physician on duty, Dr. Ramirez, felt a prickle of unease. He wasn't deeply familiar with Lily's lengthy, complex case, but the name rang a bell, associated with tragedy and endless medical crises. Now, another daughter, another sudden, serious diagnosis? And cancer? That wasn't something usually missed in a child's history. Dr. Ramirez did a quick chart review for Chloe. Nothing. No mention of prior malignancies. He listened patiently as Eleanor detailed Chloe's suffering, her voice catching appropriately, her eyes pleading. Yet, Chloe herself seemed subdued, perhaps, but not acutely ill in the way Eleanor described. A nagging doubt prompted Dr. Ramirez to do something simple, something maybe others hadn't. He made a call. He contacted the hospital where Eleanor claimed Chloe had received previous cancer treatment. The answer came back swift and clear: no record. No cancer. Ever. The lie was exposed. It was blatant, easily disproven. This wasn't just an anxious mother, this felt like active fabrication. Alarmed, Dr. Ramirez bypassed Eleanor and contacted Child Protective Services directly. The potential for endangerment was too high to ignore. That single phone call became the investigation trigger, the catalyst that finally ripped the carefully constructed facade apart. With social services now involved and alerted to Eleanor's documented deception regarding Chloe, investigators turned their attention back to the voluminous, heartbreaking file of her deceased younger sister, Lily. Suddenly, 5 years of medical history were viewed through a new, horrifying lens. The 1,000-plus hospital visits, the escalating treatments, the reliance on Eleanor's reports for unobserved symptoms like seizures, it all started to look less like misfortune and more like a pattern. A deeply disturbing pattern known by a clinical name, Munchausen by proxy, now more commonly termed factitious disorder imposed on another. A mental disorder where a caregiver, often a mother, fabricates or induces illness in someone under their care, driven by a pathological need for attention, sympathy, or control. Lily, it seemed, hadn't been merely sick, she had been a victim. The investigation intensified. In a grim, heartbreaking necessity, authorities obtained permission to exhume Lily's small body from the Maple Creek Cemetery. Hopes were pinned on finding definitive proof, traces of poison, evidence of medication overdose. But the autopsy results proved agonizingly inconclusive. There was no smoking gun, no single finding that screamed foul play in isolation. Yet, the absence of significant pathology, combined with the overwhelming history of extreme medical intervention for unverified conditions, painted its own damning picture. The truth settled like a physical weight. As soon as Chloe was removed from Eleanor's influence, her mysterious bone pain and other reported symptoms simply vanished. She was healthy. She had always been healthy. The implication was staggering, almost unbelievable. Lily, too, had likely been healthy. All of it, the surgeries that reshaped her tiny body, the feeding tubes, the powerful neurocom dulling her mind, the TPN drip, the endless hospital stays, the entire loss of childhood had been inflicted. Fabricated. A monstrous betrayal orchestrated by her own mother. For the family, particularly Grandpa Arthur, the revelation was catastrophic. His grief morphed into a sickening blend of horror and soul-crushing guilt. Every memory became tainted. Every visit, every shared smile, every time he'd believed Eleanor's reassurances, all replayed in his mind with agonizing clarity. Lily's whispered words, "Grandpa, I'm hungry," echoed endlessly, no longer just a moment of sadness, but evidence of his unwitting complicity in her starvation. He had been manipulated, his love for both his daughter and granddaughter weaponized against him. The family trauma was immense, the betrayal absolute. The mirror had cracked, revealing the monstrous reality behind the facade. Eleanor's actions weren't just a tragic anomaly, they fit a chilling, recognized pattern of abuse. The revelation of Eleanor's deception cast her actions in a chilling new light, placing her within a disturbing, though thankfully rare, gallery of caregivers who inflict harm under the guise of care. Her behavior wasn't just a tragic, inexplicable anomaly, it aligned disturbingly well with a recognized pattern of medical child abuse known clinically as factitious disorder imposed on another, FDIA, often still referred to by its older, more evocative name, Munchausen by proxy. This isn't about a parent merely being overly anxious, it's a complex psychological disorder where an individual, typically a caregiver, deliberately fabricates, exaggerates, or induces physical or psychological symptoms in another person under their care. The motivation isn't usually direct financial gain, though that can become an opportunistic byproduct, as seen with Eleanor's fundraising and potential, fictional Medicaid name, fraud, but rather a pathological need to garner attention, sympathy, and a sense of importance or control through the proxy of the sick dependent. Understanding this pattern helps contextualize the seemingly incomprehensible. Eleanor's story finds disturbing echoes in other fictionalized accounts, vignettes drawn from the shadows of similar real-world tragedies. Consider the hypothetical case of Ava, a teenager seemingly afflicted with a baffling array of debilitating conditions since early childhood. Her devoted mother keeps her isolated, homeschooled, and largely confined to a wheelchair, citing extreme fatigue, allergies, and mysterious neurological symptoms reported solely by her. The local community, moved by the mother's saintly portrayal online and in person, rallies around them, even building a specially adapted extension onto their home. Friends marvel at the mother's strength. Doctors, presented with years of meticulously documented symptoms by the mother and faced with Ava's passive demeanor, struggle to find objective evidence but often defer to the caregiver's detailed history. The hidden truth? Ava's conditions are largely fabricated, the wheelchair unnecessary, tools used by the mother to maintain absolute control and bask in the glow of martyrdom. Or picture Mrs. Davies, a young mother who becomes an online sensation through her heart-wrenching blog detailing her toddler son's baffling, severe digestive issues and terrifying seizures. She shares photos, videos, desperate updates, and poignant reflections on faith and resilience. A massive online following offers prayers, emotional support, and thousands in donations via a linked Hope Fund page. She appears on local news as an advocate for children with rare diseases. But eventually, after a near-fatal hospital admission where diligent nurses notice inconsistencies, the horrifying reality surfaces. Mrs. Davies had been secretly introducing high concentrations of common household substances into her son's formula and feeding tube, inducing the very symptoms that brought her so much attention and acclaim. These fictional case examples, though varied in detail, highlight the common threads woven through FDIA/Munchausen by proxy patterns. Masterful psychological manipulation is key, the ability to convincingly perform the role of the worried, hypervigilant caregiver, often learning enough medical jargon to sound credible. The exploitation of systemic vulnerabilities within healthcare is common. Busy doctors may rely heavily on reported histories, especially when objective signs are ambiguous or tests inconclusive. Public deception, often amplified by social media, fuels the caregiver's need for validation and can bring tangible rewards. Underlying it all is the complex abuser's psychology, deep-seated insecurities, personality disorders, or a desperate craving for a role that brings significance, even if achieved through horrifying means. Eleanor's actions, the relentless pursuit of diagnoses, the doctor shopping, the insistence on symptoms others didn't see, the curated social media presence, the exploitation of charities like the Starlight Dreams Foundation, fit squarely within this disturbing framework. Recognizing this pattern doesn't excuse the behavior, rather, it underscores the calculated nature of the abuse and the profound betrayal involved. It also highlights the potential deadliness of this disorder. It is not merely deception, it is severe medical child abuse that puts victims like Lily at grave risk, subjecting them to painful, unnecessary procedures and medications, and, in the most tragic instances, directly causing their deaths through induced illness or, as in Lily's case, calculated neglect disguised as end-of-life care. Understanding these disturbing echoes and the mechanics of this specific form of abuse underscores the urgency of accountability. What, then, were the consequences for Eleanor and the institutions that missed the warning signs in Lily's tragic case? Understanding these disturbing echoes and the mechanics of this specific form of abuse underscores the urgency of accountability. While the psychological complexities driving Eleanor might remain partly obscured, the consequences of her actions and the failures of the systems around her demanded a reckoning. The wheels of justice, though turning slowly after Lily's death and the subsequent investigation triggered by the incident with Chloe, finally began to grind towards some semblance of accountability in 2018. Eleanor was arrested, facing a battery of charges that reflected the horrifying scope of her deception. Initial indictments were severe, potentially including first-degree murder, acknowledging the deliberate nature of withholding life-sustaining nutrition via the TPN removal. Added to this were numerous counts related to the extensive fundraising fraud and theft from charities and donors who believed they were helping a terminally ill child. The legal battle that followed was complex, navigating the difficult terrain of proving intent versus negligence in the context of fabricated illness. Ultimately, in 2022, the case concluded not with a full trial exposing every detail to public scrutiny, but with a plea agreement. Eleanor pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of child abuse resulting in death, framed perhaps by her defense as tragic negligence rather than outright murder, along with charges related to fraud and theft. The resulting sentence, 16 years in prison, with additional time for the financial crimes to be served concurrently. Yet, even in the face of this legal resolution, Eleanor maintained a chilling lack of remorse. Her public statements, filtered through her lawyer, Julia Hayes, insisted on her innocence regarding the intent behind Lily's death. She claimed her guilty plea was a selfless act, undertaken solely to shield her surviving family from the immense stress and public scrutiny of a lengthy trial. It was a narrative consistent with her long history of manipulation, casting herself as a victim, even in accountability. Prosecutor Marcus Thorne offered a stark counterpoint during sentencing, emphasizing the profound betrayal. Eleanor hadn't just harmed her daughter. She had systematically defrauded organizations dedicated to helping genuinely sick children and families in desperate need, exploiting their compassion for potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. While Eleanor faced prison, the question of institutional accountability loomed large over Pinnacle Children's Hospital. How could such prolonged, severe abuse occur under the noses of countless medical professionals? This question fueled a separate legal battle, spearheaded by the heartbroken but determined Grandpa Arthur. He filed a multi-million-dollar civil lawsuit against the hospital, seeking not just monetary damages but, more importantly, answers and systemic changes to prevent future tragedies. His lawsuit laid bare the hospital's alleged failures, a devastating catalog of missed warning signs and ignored red flags. Why, the suit demanded, was Eleanor's word repeatedly taken over objective evidence, or the lack thereof? Doctors had never witnessed the seizures she described, yet Lily was kept on potent Neurocom for years. Why were the explicit concerns raised by specialists, the neurologist questioning the seizures, Dr. Ramirez voicing alarm about Chloe's fabricated illness mirroring Lily's history, apparently dismissed or overruled? Perhaps most damningly, why was a detailed report from the prestigious Coastal Pediatric Center received 2 full years before Lily died, recommending the removal of tubes and weaning off medications because Lily could likely lead a normal life, seemingly ignored by Pinnacle staff. The lawsuit painted a picture of profound systemic failure, breakdowns in communication between departments, a potential reluctance to challenge a persuasive and demanding parent, and, critically, a failure to adhere to mandatory reporting laws despite numerous potential triggers over 5 long years. Were staff afraid? Overwhelmed? Simply too trusting? The hospital, likely facing a damaging public trial, chose to settle the lawsuit out of court for a substantial, though undisclosed, sum. Accountability, in this venue, remained behind closed doors. For Grandpa Arthur, the settlement offered little solace for his enduring guilt and grief. His advocacy became relentless, fueled by the memory of Lily's whispered hunger. The lies were discovered too late, he stated publicly, his voice thick with pain. A simple phone call could have saved her life. She would still be with us. He spoke of staff members confiding after Lily's death that they hadn't believed she was truly terminal, admissions that only twisted the knife of his guilt deeper. He had believed Eleanor, enforced her cruel rules in palliative care, and unwittingly participated in the final act of betrayal. His fight became ensuring no other family, no other child, endured such a preventable horror due to systemic blind spots. While the legal system delivered a verdict for Eleanor and the civil suit extracted a settlement from the hospital, the questions lingered: was justice truly served? And more importantly, have the lessons from Lily's stolen life truly been learned? While the legal system delivered a verdict for Eleanor and the civil suit extracted a settlement from Pinnacle Children's Hospital, the questions lingered, heavy and unanswered in the quiet aftermath. Was justice truly served? Had the profound betrayal and systemic failures that cost Lily her life led to any meaningful change? What legacy does her story, a narrative steeped in unimaginable deception and stolen potential, leave us? In the end, the story of Lily is a devastating tragedy, a stark chronicle of a young life extinguished not by intractable disease, but by calculated manipulation and a catastrophic failure of protection. It's a story of shattered trust, the trust a child places in her mother, the trust a family places in medical expertise, and the trust society places in institutions designed to safeguard the vulnerable. Eleanor's actions represent an extreme, horrifying edge of human behavior, a manifestation of what experts call factitious disorder imposed on another, or Munchausen by proxy. A chilling reminder that caregiving itself can be twisted into a weapon, that illness can be fabricated for unfathomable psychological needs. But Lily's story is also one of profound systemic failure. It exposes the dangerous blind spots within our healthcare accountability structures. It reveals how easily a determined manipulator can exploit deference to parental authority, communication gaps between specialists, and perhaps even a reluctance among overworked professionals to confront uncomfortable suspicions. Over 5 years, through more than 1,000 points of contact with the medical world, the pattern was missed, the red flags ignored, the mandatory reporting protocols seemingly bypassed. It's a chilling testament to how systems, even those filled with well-meaning individuals, can fail when vigilance falters and critical questioning is suppressed. Yet, amidst the darkness of this betrayal, it's crucial to remember Lily herself. Not just as the victim defined by her mother's actions, but as the bright, imaginative child glimpsed by those who truly saw her. As the family's attorney, Daniel Harrison, might have reflected, even though all Lily knew for years was the blur of ambulance rides, hospital rooms, invasive tubes, and potent medications, the fragmented evidence of her life tells a story of resilience. Photos and anecdotes capture moments of an indomitable spirit, a little girl who still found ways to laugh, who loved to create, who clung to the small joys life offered her. She possessed an inherent love for life that was systematically undermined. She deserved to be here today, growing, learning, fulfilling the potential that was so cruelly snatched away. Her name was Lily. Remembering her demands more than just sorrow or outrage. It demands vigilance. It demands that we learn the painful lessons learned from her stolen life. It requires us to foster a culture, within families, communities, and especially within the medical profession, where questioning is encouraged, where dissenting opinions among staff are heard and investigated, not dismissed. It means prioritizing objective evidence and the holistic well-being of the child, refusing to be swayed solely by a caregiver's narrative when inconsistencies arise. It necessitates robust training for professionals to recognize the subtle and overt signs of medical child abuse and the unwavering enforcement of child protection laws. Systemic change is not simple, but it is essential. Better communication protocols, clear pathways for reporting suspicions without fear of retribution, and a fundamental commitment to believing the unbelievable when evidence points towards it. These are critical steps. Lily's memory should serve as a catalyst, a constant, painful reminder of the human cost of failure. Let us honor her not by merely recounting the tragedy, but by demanding and creating a world with stronger safeguards, ensuring no other child suffers such a profound betrayal under the guise of care. The responsibility rests not just within hospital walls, but with all of us, to remain aware, to question, and to protect.